of the Planning Committee. It is normal practice that I now introduce people on the top table, but as we've got people in the virtual room, I'm going to ask them to do it themselves tonight, starting with Bob on my right.
I'm Councillor Bob Kobe and I'm Vice Chairman of the Planning Committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Annette Roberts and I'm Corporate Director, Infrastructure and Business Growth. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Simon Hall, Staffordshire County Council, Highways Development Team Leader.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Pardip Sharma and I'm the Planning Solicitor for the Authority.
Good evening, members. I'm Kelly Harris. I'm the Lead Planning Manager for South Staffs Council.
I'm Lucy Duffy. I'm the Assistant Team Manager for the south of the district.
I'm Tom Nutt, Senior Planning Officer.
Thank you. And in the far left corner of the room there, we've got Carol. She'll introduce herself.
Carol Bloxham, Democratic Support.
Thank you all. Okay, let's start. Open the agenda, please. Minutes of the last meeting. Members, have you got any comments or observation on the minutes of the last meeting? No? Can we accept them as a true record? Thank you very much for that. Apologies. I have got Councillors Diane Holmes, Bob Spencer, Joe Chapman, and I presume Isabel Ford, because I saw her in the virtual room speaking from home 10 or 15 minutes ago. Any other apologies, please? No. Thank you for that. Declarations of interest. Does any member have a declaration of interest?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
21-01123 full. I have an interest in that and I will withdraw from the meeting where I've discussed.
Councillor Lynn Hingley.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got declaration on 21/01033/full. My comments about the application have been interrupted as a predetermined opinion. And so I have taken the advice of the monitoring officer. I will not take part in the debate or vote in this matter, and I should probably leave the room.
Yeah, I understand it's your intention to speak as ward member. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
We'll now move on to the determination of planning applications. And the first application before us is 21/00631 FUL, and it's land at Ladywood Lane. And the recommendation is to approve the application subject to section 106. Lucy, can you please summarise the application for us? Thank you.
The site is an area of land designated for housing in the Council's adopted site allocations document, designated to deliver housing for the main service village of Great Worley. The site is well located to a number of local facilities in the surrounding area, including but not limited to the Landywood Railway Station, Great Worley Community Centre, Doctor's Surgery, Pharmacy, Post Office, facilities located within the local shopping centre, open space and equipped play, including Stepping Stones Park and Landywood Skate Park. This full planning application seeks planning permission for the construction of 50 dwellings served by a new vehicle access off Landywood Lane, together with the delivery of a new car park to serve the Landywood Railway Station, the provision of public open space, surface water attenuation and associated enabling works. It is proposed for the site to be accessed through the creation of a new priority junction with Landywood Lane along the northern boundary of the site. The creation of a primary route into the site will connect into a street hierarchy of secondary streets and private driveways. An extension to the existing footway to the south of Landywood Lane is proposed to connect the new homes with the existing network of streets, together with the incorporation of an existing public right-of-way, providing a connection to the proposed linear park to the west. The scheme proposes the delivery of 50 dwellings with a resultant density of approximately 30 to 31 dwellings per hectare. 40% of all proposed dwellings will be delivered as affordable, split 50% shared social rented, I beg your pardon, and 50% shared ownership. The development also includes approximately 2.2 hectares of public open space, both within the allocation and through the provision of a first phase of a new linear park to the west, connected to the proposed dwellings via an existing public right-of-way. Within this site, the new central green will be provided together with a tree-lined and landscaped principal road that links to the existing public right-of-way and landscape planting. The layout of the site has evolved through careful consideration of the site's constraints and opportunities and has been arranged to address Landywood Lane and provides an active frontage to the development. The spinal road through the site will be tree-lined and dwellings will be staggered to provide an attractive development, creating a sense of place. It is understood that a comprehensive scheme of intrusive site investigations has been undertaken, and as a consequence, 4 of the 5 mine entries have been located. Improved drilling and grouting will be required for each. In terms of the 1 mine entry that was not located, the investigations undertaken appear to be appropriate having regard to the evidential source of the mine's entry positioning. The Coal Authority Environment Agency have assessed the supporting information and have raised no objections subject to the inclusion of appropriate conditions. The application is supported by a comprehensive transport statement which considers the proposed residential access junction and the Landywood Lane station car park access. The report confirms that the proposed development access would be in the form of a new simple priority junction with Landywood Lane. Visibility displays at the junction can be provided, and a number of issues that have been resolved through negotiations, and the County Highways team is satisfied with the proposal subject to a number of conditions, including relevant visibility displays. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the agreement of Section 106. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. We've got 2 speakers. The first speaker is Mr. Neil Cox, the agent, and speaking for the application. Mr. Cox, you've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members of this committee. National guidance establishes the presumption in favour of sustainable development. For decision taking, this means approving development proposals that accord with an up-to-date local plan without delay. This application relates to a sustainably located development of 50 homes within a main service village where the local plan seeks to focus around 90% of the district's housing growth. The application site represents a housing allocation, reference 136, within the adopted SAD and a proportion of the designated linear park. The SAD was adopted in 2018 and is considered up to date. Landywood Lane was selected through the Council's robust site selection process and subject to scrutiny by an independent planning inspector, who concluded the proposed allocation at Landywood Lane was fully justified, effective and soundly based. It is recognised that there have been a large number of objections to this proposal. Many of these focus upon the inappropriateness of development within the Greenbelt and the principle of further development in the area. These matters were fully considered and tested through the preparation of the Council's core strategy and SAD, and this proposal relates to a site removed from the Greenbelt by the District Council and allocated for housing. The principle of residential development has therefore been firmly established through the adoption of the full development plan back in 2018, which takes primacy in the determination of planning applications. The proposal before members this evening fully restores and makes safe an area of currently unstable former mined land and comprises 50 new homes and supporting infrastructure to provide community benefit. Such infrastructure includes a new 44-vehicle car park to serve Landywood Railway Station, an on-site public open space to include a children's play area, and the first phase of a new linear park to be transferred to the District Council. The infrastructure proposed is in line with the requirements established through the SAD. The remaining elements of the linear park and allotments are proposed to be delivered as part of a future phase of development on safeguarded land, fully recognising that this is subject to further consideration through the emerging local plan process. In addition, the proposal satisfies all other policy requirements established in the development plan. The proposal provides 40% affordable housing. Over 10% of the homes proposed comprise bungalows. Housing mix is aligned to the council's evidence base that seeks a greater proportion of 2 and 3 bed homes. All homes have been designed to meet nationally described space standards. All homes meet the council's space about dwellings requirements. The net density of the scheme is approximately 30 dwellings per hectare, which is slightly lower than many existing residential areas within Great Worley and Cheslin Hay, but still makes sufficient use of space. The proposal delivers a net gain in biodiversity, calculated to be significantly in excess of 10%. The proposal protects and integrates existing public rights of way on site to maximise pedestrian connectivity. A new pedestrian link is provided to Stepping Stones Park. Tree-lined streets have been incorporated to reflect new national guidance. Sustainable drainage systems are incorporated to deal with surface water and to allow peak flow rates to be reduced and enable flows to be limited to significantly below the existing runoff rate during storm events. The scheme has been designed to be visually attractive and reflect local design policies. Cameron Homes has worked collaboratively with officers to refine the scheme through the determination period to address any detailed issues raised, and importantly for a local based house builder to ensure the delivery of a high quality scheme. As presented in your officer's comprehensive report, there are no technical objections from statutory consultees, including County Highways, County Flood Team, the Coal Authority, Environment Agency, the County Archaeologist, County Ecologist or the Tree Officer. Cameron Homes supports the case officer's conclusion, recognising the proposal is in full accordance with the development plan for South Staffordshire District. It is therefore respectfully requested that your officer's professional view is fully considered and planning permission granted, subject to the conditions and the section 106 heads of terms are set out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Mr. Emery speaking against the application. You two have 5 minutes, sir.
My name is Ian Emery and I've been delegated to read the objections against the planning application 21/0631/FUL on behalf of the consultees wishing to speak at this planning committee. Although this application is physically in Great Worley, it is adjacent to the parish border. Due to the close proximity of the villages, any housing developments in either parish impact on the amenities on both parishes. The density of population in Cheslin Hay is already far greater than any other areas of South Staffordshire. The majority of residents have overwhelmingly opposed applications for this site since the initial refusal in October 2013. Following a public inquiry, there have been public meetings, a petition and a local MP supported residents in opposing the development. The national policy is to protect the Greenbelt land. Cheslin Hay Parish Council and consultees listed above object to any development on the Greenbelt. This land was at one time an open cast mine, and there are issues relating to the stability of the site which make it totally unsuitable for development. Once the Greenbelt land is breached, the developer would be able to quote precedent for future development as it would outline the planning permission in phase 2. In any case, brownfield sites should be developed first. This particular development would create significant urban sprawl between the two villages. The application would reduce the visual amenity and effectively close the natural borders between the two villages of Great Worley and Cheslin Hay. This would lead to the loss of identity for both villages, and this open space should be preserved for future generations. Protected species have been identified in this area, along with urban wildlife, which all would lose their natural habitat should this site be approved. This is the only area of natural land between Cheslin Hay and Great Worley, and we would have a devastating effect on the land where plants, trees and wildlife can flourish. This is also a public right-of-way footpath on this site, which is no longer in evidence and should be investigated. This site exceeds the allocation numbers recommended by the site allocations document for Great Worley, and together with developments in Cheslin Hay would lead to overdevelopment and density issues for both villages, and an inability to support additional dwellings in terms of the infrastructure. Any development should have in excess of 40% of site affordable housing. This development was not originally part of the SAD consultation and was only entered due to unsuitable sites elsewhere in Great Worley. Landwood Lane is susceptible to flooding, and removing greenbelt land and adding housing stock will result in water being able to soak away, creating additional flooding issues. Trial pit investigations were carried out in 2012, and the report stated that the site was poorly drained and boggy in part, and the near surface soils are not considered suitable drainage materials for the disposal of stormwater from the new houses and paved areas. This also brings into question the stability of the land due to the open casts in the area. The current sewage system in the locality needs to be addressed before any further developments are added to the infrastructure. The current main sewer system, controlled by Severn Trent, is not fit for purpose, and tankers are queuing up at pumping stations in Coppice Lane on a regular basis to pump out excess waste. The Morris Homes development at the New Horse Road is still not connected to the main sewer system, and they currently have a tanker to remove waste from a cesspit in front of the estate. Once connected, this will add pressure to the main sewer system, which is unable to cope with the current demand. Development of field by Landwood Lane would also be a very serious flood risk to the residential and business properties downstream of the Worley Brook. The entrance to this site and the new 44 space car park is adjacent to a bridge at an angle which has suffered several accidents, including the bridge being hit by a lorry. The actual entrance is opposite factories which have a high volume of large vehicles frequenting the premises. The factory owners should be consulted as part of this process. A site visit needs to be carried out in rush hour traffic to witness the hazards and impact the additional cars from the site would create. There are several schools between Chesley and Great Worley, and access to and from the estate at school opening and closing times and at the rush hour periods would be virtually at a standstill. Holly Lane, where Landywood Primary School is situated, is virtually at a standstill during school times as it is, and the roads leading to and from Landywood Lane would all be affected, many of which are not fit for purpose for excess traffic. Junctions around the estate are also busy and overused. This would also impact on the air quality in terms of emissions and have a significant adverse impact on the general traffic and highway safety. In conclusion, we urge the South Staffordshire Council to listen to the residents and reject this proposal. In addition to other objections, a petition of 2,039 names was submitted by Gavin Wilkinson.
Please finish
Okay.
what you were going to say. Please finish.
Gavin Williamson MP for this application and similar numbers for previous applications. Please consider the quality of life of residents of Chesley Lane. If this application is approved, it will set a precedent for further applications to follow and result in the erosion of identity of the individual villages of Chesley Lane and Great Worley.
Thank
you very much.
I think that woke everybody up. I wasn't expecting to be that loud. Okay, we haven't got any local members, so I'm going to open this up to the committee now. Does any member wish to speak on this planning application? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to express my concern, having looked at the numbers of objections. You will already know, because I've spoken about this before, that I believe that strategic gaps should be left between communities, and I also believe that the green belt in this case should be retained. I have been to Landywood Lane. I have looked at the flooding that takes place there, and I understand everything that's being said by the parish council, which I've taken careful note of during this application. I do understand that it's part of our local plan. I do understand as well that there will be occasions on which the local plan will be challenged. I understand that speaking about this at this late juncture when the land is already tagged for housing is a difficult matter. However, we are asked to respond to local people. That is why we are here. We've heard their objections this evening. Thank you for bringing them. I do believe that communities need to retain their own identities. And I'm saying that living myself in a village that has a problem with the strategic gaps between ourselves and Wolverhampton. So I understand that. I understand the hesitation about using a former open cast mine site. I fully understand that, although obviously every technical report that we have here is actually approving it and saying there isn't a particular problem, even though there are details in here that seriously concern me about the condition of the ground. In fact, in some ways, this should really be called a brownfield site, I felt. Nevertheless, I'm going to say to you that I'm going to vote against this because I see the merging of two communities. I see the volume of objection. I feel seriously concerned about the condition of the site. And I also hear very much the local view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Having read this fully, this application, and coming from Great Worley, I find that that piece of land there is the only piece of land that we have got in Landywood and for Great Worley and Landywood people. Now, Cheslin Hay, from what I can gather from the gentleman that's spoken, is against this application, but it isn't in Cheslin Hay, it's in Landywood. And it's at the top end of our area. We've got market housing for 30. There's rented social housing, which we desperately need in Great Worley, for 10. And there's also shared ownership for another 10 properties, which is desperately needed. I can understand concerns regarding the land and things like that, but I'm sure the developers and the council have actually been investigating this land, and they wouldn't want to put 50 houses on a piece of land that wasn't worthy of it. And as regards to the green belt, this piece of land, as I understand it, was taken out of the green belt in 2018. So it isn't green belt land, and I think it's possible, it is really necessary for us in Great Worley and Landywood to have some properties to be able to, for our young people, to be able to move into the village with the parents, and that isn't available at the moment. So I am actually going to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Kelly, do you want to come in and say something?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to come on some of the comments that have been made, just to correct some of the comments that have been made. I think first and foremost, we need to be absolutely clear this is not a greenbelt site. It was removed from the greenbelt in 2018 and allocated and earmarked for housing. So the greenbelt policy is not relevant in the consideration of this application before Planning Committee. I would also pick up on some of the comments that have been made by both Councillor Allen and by the public speaker regarding the open cast mining and the land stability. That has been considered both through the site allocations process, but also comprehensively in this report, and conditions are attached to deal with that matter sufficiently to the satisfaction of the statutory bodies that are responsible for this. I'd also just pick up on some of the comments that have been made around urban sprawl and visual amenity and the loss of identity. All of those matters have been before the planning inspector that considered this site back in 2018, who concluded, and I have it here in the inspector's report at paragraph 107, that the site with the modifications that are included in the plan is fully justified, effective and soundly based. So that is the grounding of the decision that you're taking this evening. I would also say, in terms of issues around New Horse Road, I know that's been made. That is a separate issue to this, and that is being dealt with through enforcement to ensure that site is dealt with satisfactorily. But ultimately, this scheme proposes a, for want of a better word, betterment for this site and the wider community in terms of drainage, because there is known issues of drainage across Cheslin Hay and Great Worley. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because there was a comment as well about the sites being challenged. The site allocations document was open for a period of judicial review back in 2018, and it was not challenged. It is a strong, robust, up-to-date plan, and that is the starting point for your consideration this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Kelly. Councillor David Lockley.
Thank you, Chairman. As regards the SAD, I think most people in Cheslin Hay and Great Worley have been against that right from the start, allocating these two pieces of land right from the start. So it should come as no surprise to anyone on the planning, anyone of the planning office, that we're against it still. And not only that, this is right on the border of Cheslinay and Great Worley. The boundary line runs down the middle of Landywood Lane. And so all you've got to do from this site that's proposed is cross the road and you're in Cheslinay. I think that's about as close as you can get. And I think in that respect, we should have some input on this. And I think it's right that we do that. And I would point out that there's a previous application on this site went in a few years ago and was, I think it was withdrawn, but I'm not sure for the reason why. But, I suspect it was because there were too many houses was the original or the main reason for that. But there was a petition then. And the local residents voted quite significantly that they didn't want anything built there, and I think the same applies now. It should come as no surprise, although the site is perhaps smaller than was previously suggested. The principle is still the same, and the objections are still the same. And I agree with most of what Councillor Emery said earlier. I know there are one or two discrepancies as regards the actual detail, but the overall objections remain the same as they did with the original application some years ago. And I would point to the petition because I think that is particularly important. As regards the safety of the site, the Coal Authority have done some work on there, and they've found 4 of the 5 shafts. So there's one that they still haven't found, and I would hate to be the owner of the house that was built on top of that one shaft that they can't identify. And also as regards safety, which should be part of, and I think is part of our core strategy, the safety of residents, that's particularly important. If there's a question mark over it, the safety, I think we should think very carefully about it. There's also some note about gas being on that site. And that again, that scares me a little bit if there's gas down there. And, well, you know, it will explode, methane. And again, I'd hate to be one of the residents on that estate if anything happened like with that gas. But I think what disturbs me or what concerns me the most is the NPPF and the core strategy. Now, on our core strategy, under spatial strategy, strategic objective 2, I'll read it out to you because again, this is important. Well, I think it is anyway. To retain and reinforce the current, this is objective 2, to retain and reinforce the current pattern of villages across South Staffordshire. And in particular, protect and retain the important strategic gaps between existing settlements in order to prevent the coalescence of settlements. This seems to go in the exact opposite direction to that core strategy. And I think we on that basis, we really do need to consider it. And secondly, on the NPPF framework and in paragraph 80 on that. Green belt serves 5 purposes. I know it's not green belts. I know it's not. But what I point out is whether it's green belt or not, it still affects the same principles. Serves 5 purposes. One is to check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas. Secondly, to prevent neighbouring towns merging into one another. Now, irrespective whether it's greenbelt or not, this plan, this application doesn't meet those two, in my contention, it doesn't meet those two objectives of the NPPF, because it is creating sprawl and it is creating neighbouring towns merging into one. And because of those, because of our core strategy and because of the NPPF requirements, I think this should not go ahead. And I think that's all I've got to say on that. That's all I can think about at the moment anyway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lockby. I think Kelly wants to come back.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think there's a number of points there that I just need to address. First of all, I'm sure Pardic will come in and say the same as me in a moment. This application is not the opportunity to reopen the site allocations examination. This has all been put before a planning inspector, and the conclusions of that planning inspector was this site allocation was robust. So we can determine the application tonight against the planning framework, which it has to be decided against, which is that it's an allocated site. So the issues that you raised about strategic objective 2 and the 5 purposes of the Greenbelt were all discussed at length with the inspector for the site allocations examination, for him to conclude this was a robust allocation because it was the most appropriate site in Great Worley, along with the other 2 sites that were allocated off the A34 and at Pool View. So I just want to do a reminder here, because I'm sure Pardic probably will, about what Planning Committee are being asked to determine this evening. It's an application against the site allocations, NPPF, all of which have been put before the Planning Inspector previously. Thank you.
Pardic?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'm happy to reiterate the comments that have been made. Clearly, the concern expressed, by members, is well understood. But members, what we also need to understand is that you have, before you a site that has been earmarked for residential development as part of the council's recently developed, recent plan. And I emphasise the word recent. Because this is your plan which was recently adopted, and all the issues that you have actually raised were considered at the time by the inspector, and the inspector made a very clear decision that this particular site could come out of the Greenbelt and is fit for housing. And I think that before a motion is actually moved for approval or refusal of the application, it is so important to note that this is a plan that was recently adopted. I do note the concerns that have been raised in relation to safety. However, members, before you express any concerns about safety, one has to actually understand it's the professional view that will actually matter at any public inquiry, if this matter were to actually go to appeal. And what we don't have any evidence, before us, is any concerns about gas issues, any issues in relation to safety, but instead what you've got is a considerable number of very clear, precise, robust conditions, which in essence, deal with some of the matters that you have raised. I appreciate the reference that has actually been made, to the petition, and I also appreciate members that you have concern about the numbers of objections. However, the decision today has to be made purely on planning grounds, and I have to emphasise that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pardic. Robert Reid, you wanted to speak?
And thank you for what you've just said, because that's exactly why we're here. We're the members, and we're listening intently to what you said. I think that what I've heard from members that have been speaking against the recommendation is that, first of all, there was no actual policy mentioned in their refusals or suggestion of this refusal. I haven't heard anybody actually propose it yet or second it. But also the fact that the site is unquestionable, the site is allocated, and therefore it's the same as we had out in Kimber some time ago, where there was discussions on that, exactly the same. It's been allocated, so that it's out of the Greenbelt, I believe. And I think that the reasons for as the report clearly states, that the county council have got no objections, and we all know that when the county council have no objections, we can't go against that. So that, or it won't be a valid reason. And the other points that about the sort of joining up of areas. Again, I didn't hear any policy number being given, and we do rely on putting our reasons forward with policies. So therefore, I.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Rita, forgot your name. Go ahead.
It's awful, isn't it? Just a couple of comments. I support Councillor Johnson's comments about there being a need for that sort of housing. We want to encourage our young people to stay in our villages, and if there isn't appropriate housing for them, that's not going to happen. The other comments I would like to make are personal ones. I lived in Cheslinhay for 8 years. I've been through 2 open cast inquiries, and I know that once the open cast is finished, they have to leave the land in a state fit for either returning to nature or make it fit for housing and any development. I lived on the Charleston estate, which was by mines. No mines opened up there. There were perhaps historic areas that they weren't sure of, but there weren't any problems. And as I say, I know that open cast, once it's finished, it has to be returned to a suitable state. So I would be minded to go with the officer's recommendation in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened to the statements made by the parish council. Sorry, that's too far away. How's that? And by Councillor Allen and by Councillor Lockley. And I can see nothing in their statements which I disagree with. I've lived in Cheslinhay for over 50 years, right? And when they refer to the shortage of affordable housing, that's quite true. But you can't always live on the spot you were born in. And there are affordable houses being built in Cheslinhay now, which is only a short distance from Great Worley, easy within walking distance, and more on the horizon. This site is part of what used to be called the Green Lung between Bloxwich, Essington and Great Worley. And although it's not greenbelt any longer, it's still open space, it's still fields, you can still walk on it. And a far better use for that, in my view, would be to plant it and turn it into woodland in accordance with government policy for the Queen's Jubilee. They want more and more trees, millions they want. Here's a golden chance to do it. Or even into a solar park, get some solar energy. But we don't want more houses on an unsuitable site, on a narrow road, which is accident prone, which floods and which has heavy vehicles parking right by the entrance to this proposed application. And I notice on page 25, towards the bottom in the inspector's report, there's a little quote there. This proposal would effectively open up a new area of development on the southern fringe of the village. And it will do. This 50 is only part of the original 200 that were originally applied for and withdrawn. And we know that whole site, the developer wants to develop all that site right up to Landywood Lane, right opposite Cheslinhay. The whole area will be filled in. This is, in my view, just a way in. It's the first phase of other phases. I've opposed this over 25 years, 2 inquiries in public, and each time it's been rejected. And 2,000 objections is a lot of people objecting. 88 letters of objection. A lot of, we live there, and as councillors, we have to think of our communities as well. And this is the wrong development in the wrong place. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Hinchley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really just a comment. over the borders of South Staffordshire, and I live down at Kimber. They built some houses near to Brierley Hill, and that was on an open coal mine, and they were fine, they were great for a bit. And then unfortunately, later on, they started to subside, and they had to take the families out, underpin the houses, and then the families could go back in. Things were all right after that. It's just that a little bit of concern of building on a coal mine. That's all, just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hinchley. Councillor Lockley, you want to speak again? Oh, Janet, go ahead.
Just a comment, Chairman. All the councillors here that have actually gone against this application, they all live in Cheslin-Hay. They've got a new building in Cheslin-Hay for all their people to go and buy properties. Why shouldn't Great Worley and Landywood have a small development like this for their young people to be able to buy a property or have a rented property in their location where they want to be? We are Great Worley, we're not Cheslin-Hay, and everybody that's spoken up to now against it are Cheslin-Hay people.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lockley, have you got any more comment?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. To continue from Councillor Boyle's earlier statement, where it's on page 25, if anyone wants to read it, on para 537. It's the inspector. That's I take it the one who lives down Bristol, who don't know anything about the area, who independently examined the submitted SAD, found the housing allocation at Landywood Lane to be sound. His report relates to the application site and safeguarded land to the south, and the inspector states land at Landywood Lane is allocated for 35 dwellings. Well, that's wrong, isn't it? Because this is 50 open space and safeguarded land. But to carry on from, if we go about 2/3 of the way down there, down that paragraph, it says this proposal would effectively open up a new area of development on the southern fringe of the village and form firm defensible boundaries will be needed around the edges to prevent further encroachment in the future. Now I'm a little bit, I don't know how to translate that. The firm defensive boundaries will be needed around the edges to prevent further encroachment in the future. So, I mean, is that the inspector saying that there shouldn't be any more houses down there, and we should put up firm defensible boundaries, or are we going to have further encroachment on this? I think it's a little bit ambiguous to me. I'd like some explanation onto exactly what our interpretation of that's going to be, but it wouldn't surprise me, the answer I got. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lockley. Kelly, you want to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The paragraph that's being referred to, obviously it needs to be read in full. We need to be careful not to take parts of it without the full context of it. It's referring to the allocated site, but also the wider safeguarded land site, which is 5.2 hectares. And what the inspector was asking, and it's got a reference code there of MM16. So if you read the paperwork that goes with the inspector's report, MM16 related to a strong hedge line boundary along the southern edge of the safeguarded land part of site 136, ensuring a strong and enduring greenbelt boundary. That can be found on page 85 of the site allocations document. What the inspector is saying there is subject to that addition being put into the planning requirements of this site, with that recommended modification for the greenbelt boundary on the southern extreme of the safeguarded land. The proposal is fully justified, effective and soundly based with that MM16 addition to the policy.
Thank you, Kelly. Any other member wish to speak? Okay. Can I just say something then? Everybody's heard speak of the development plan. Every planning authority in the country has to have a development plan. If you don't have a development plan, you can become an ineffective planning authority, and the government have powers to take that responsibility away from you. And somebody who lives in Bristol or somewhere else then takes responsibility for our planning. So I think it's back in 2015 or 2016, work was begun on the current development plan. It took 4 years to reach a decision whereby the planning inspectorate agreed that the plan was sound, and we adopted the plan in 2018. And that adoption of that plan and the SAD sites that were identified in that plan gave a principle of development. So the land in question before us tonight, back in 2018, the principle of development was made. All we are doing tonight is discussing whether the proposed development complies with our plan, and I believe it does, and whether it's acceptable to us as a planning authority. And that's a matter for members to decide. If we, I've already said, if we don't have a proper development plan, we can lose control of our planning authority powers. We are currently going through another development plan, one that will probably come online, is it next year, 2023? 2023, it should be completed. And we've done a lot of consultation on this current plan, as we did with the previous plan. And there wasn't much objection raised to SAD site 133 back in 2018, and it is too late now to make those protests. So all we've got to do tonight is to make a decision. Now, I haven't heard anybody propose to oppose or refuse this application. So I'm now going to put this to the vote. And let me go to the appropriate page first.
Can I ask a question, please, for
You
enlightenment?
certainly can, yes.
On page 25, this paragraph we've been quoting, it says to prevent further encroachment in the future, this should be recognised in the planning requirements MM16. Is it recognised? It just says should. Will it be?
Yes, I think if you look at the current plan, I think you'll find it is. But I'll let Kelly answer, definitely.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, MM16 was fully implemented with the additional, sorry, I've got my mask on, force of habit, with the additional bullet point being added into the planning requirements of Site 136, and it can be seen on page 85 of the site allocations document. Final bullet point is provide strong hedge line boundary along the southern edge of the safeguarded land part of Site 136, ensuring a strong and enduring green belt boundary. That's in the policy and will come forward when the site allocations when the safeguarded land comes forward.
Thank you. Members, the recommendation is to, based on the conclusions above, which is the report, that the planning committee on this application is delegated to the authority to be granted to the lead planning manager to grant planning permission, subject to a Section 106 agreement that's got 5 or 6 points in it, and then 5 pages of conditions, so that all the concerns that have been expressed tonight are dealt with by way of condition. So I'm going to propose that we approve this planning application tonight, and I would like somebody to second that, please. Thank you, Robert Reid. All those in favour of the application, please vote.
11. 12 in favour.
The application is approved. Thank you.
Can I just check how many against, please?
Yeah. Sorry?
It's just a good idea just to check how
There's
many
18.
against.
There's 18.
Sorry?
All those against, sorry.
What's against, please?
Yeah, all those against, please. 1, 2.
Could I ask my name to be recorded? Thank you.
Yeah, just for the record.
Okay. 3 against then. And Vice Chairman didn't vote because he had to leave the room for a short time. And if you do that, you're not allowed to vote.
12-3.
Okay. That is the end of that planning application. We'll now move on to the next planning application, which is 21/00655/FUL. And this is again land at Landywood Lane, and it's to do with the highway access. And Kelly, if you can, sorry, Lucy, if you can just summarise for me, please.
Yes, following on from that planning application, yet a separate application nonetheless. This full planning application seeks permission for the creation of a new simple priority junction at Landywood Lane to serve the proposed residential development currently under consideration, together with a separate new simple priority junction to the proposed new car park serving the Landywood railway station. This application is specifically related to the access proposals. A number of issues were highlighted that have been resolved through negotiations, and the County Highways team are satisfied with the proposal, subject to a number of conditions, including relevant visibility displays. The application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Lucy. Again, we have 2 speakers. Mr. Neil Cox, who's speaking for the application. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Cox. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This separate application relates specifically to the access arrangements of the residential site and the proposed car park to serve Landywood railway station. The access proposals have been progressed as a separate application to allow for early dialogue with County Council and to allow for the necessary Section 278 consent to be achieved without the need to await a decision notice on the main application, which will obviously take some time due to the requirement for a Section 106 agreement to be completed and signed. The proposal is for the construction of 2 new simple priority junctions with Landywood Lane to serve both the residential proposal and the railway car park. It should be noted that further pedestrian crossing points are identified, including a new pedestrian link between the proposed linear park and Stepping Stones Park. The application also proposes an extension to the existing footway to the south of Landywood Lane to provide pedestrian access to the residential development, and proposes to relocate and improve the existing footway east of the main site entrance, so it is positioned adjacent to the highway to remove the issue of car parking that takes place on the existing grass verge. A speed reduction scheme is also proposed to reduce carriage width in front of the allocation and to reduce speeds. The proposal has been subject to a Stage 1 road safety audit, and the issues identified are easily capable of being resolved through ongoing detailed designs being prepared by Amy and through proposed conditions. This is dealt with paragraph 5.4.6 within your officer's report. Issues of highway capacity and highway safety have been fully considered through the submitted transport statement and the Stage 1 road safety audit. In response, the County Council Highways have offered no objection to the proposal, subject to a number of conditions that are outlined in the report. It's therefore respectfully requested that your officer's professional view is fully considered, planning permission granted, subject to the conditions as set out in the committee report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. You also have 5 minutes.
In addition to the objections raised in the application, there are further concerns in this application regarding highway safety, access and drainage issues. The entrance to this site and the new 44-space car park is adjacent to a bridge at an angle which has suffered several accidents, including the bridge being hit by a lorry. The actual entrance is opposite factories, which have a high volume of large vehicles frequenting the premises. The factory owners should be consulted as part of the process. A site visit needs to be carried out in rush hour traffic to witness the hazards and impact the additional cars from this site would create. The lack of current incidents from HGV drivers is likely due to the fact that the drivers have local knowledge of the hazards, such as the tight bridge crossing. New drivers providing materials for this site from across the country will not have that local knowledge. Within the transport statement, it notes that the access will be for 300 houses, which potentially means there will be another 600 cars congesting the road system. This would also impact on the air quality in terms of emissions, having a significant adverse impact on general traffic and highway safety. I note the reports in the pack, but has anyone completed a real-life risk assessment? Has anyone considered a real-life scenario with someone running late? They park on the new car park and are now running to the station. What does their route look like? When running down the road to the junction of the streets lane, you have to now watch traffic from 3 directions. Then you run over the bridge and start running down the footpath, but now you have to cross another road. You can't see the cars coming over the bridge until the last minute. Then once you cross the road, you have to run down the steps into the existing car park, and in winter, the steps are snow or ice covered. A very easy solution would you come up with an agreement with the co-op, as they have an underused car park. Its surface exists as in good condition, so there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's on the right side of the tracks, and it's a simple walk and an easy run if you happen to be late. An even easier solution would be to open the green land adjacent to the existing car park. It needs surfacing, but there would be no environmental argument against this, as the proposed land for car park also needs surfacing, and again, would be a simple walk or run. Disabled access. As a risk assessment for disabled access being carried out, I didn't see one in the pack. This is not a wheelchair access friendly car park. A wheelchair customer would have to negotiate crossing Streets Lane Junction as above. They will have to ensure 3 directions of traffic they will have to clear. Will a new pedestrian crossing be made at the Streets Lane, and who will be paying for it? Should there even be an accident, there are not the same circumstances and should be considered at a planning approval stage. Then we go on to the drainage issues. The Whirley Brook is the collecting basin for water from Landywood, Essington, Hensford and Heath Hayes. It flows through the site of the proposed development, which is 175 metres above sea level, down the Station Road and Dodges Lane. At present, the Whirley Brook floods every 10 to 15 years. The most recent flood was May 2018. After a very severe and sudden storm event, both Station Road and Dodges Lane were impassable, with water in Station Road up to 18 inches deep. The meadow on which the development is proposed is approximately 0.6 square kilometres and covered by lush grass. This area of land acts as a sponge at the top of the water slide. In effect, it absorbs water after severe storm events and prevents a sudden inflow into the Whirley Brook. Apart from after very severe and sudden storm events, building anything on this patch of land would prevent this absorption. The houses there would not be affected, but those downstream would be affected fairly regularly, and the surface water attenuation measures would make it worse. The water level in the Whirley Brook reaches its banks several times a year, and if this development took place, severe flooding in this area could occur once or twice a year, particularly if climate change increases sudden storm events. Staffordshire County Council, Severn Trent and Environment Agency are jointly working at the moment to investigate the flooding issues in and around Whirley Brook, but whether work is carried out depends on the finances available. In conclusion, please consider the quality of life of residents of Chesley Lane. If this application is approved, all the points above will be further exacerbated as the development grows. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emery. We have no local members again, so I'm going to open this up to the committee to start speaking. Janet, you want to go first?
Can I just say, regards to Whirley Brook, I do know that there are things in hand now with regards to Whirley Brook that are going to be addressed, and it's going to have a complete renew makeover, and it's the actual study's been done, and we're having a new makeover there, and it will make life a lot easier for everybody that lives in that area, because I must admit it has been bad with regards to the surface water coming down from the top end of Chesley and Hay and Great Whirley down to the Whirley Brook to the bottom end where I live for flooding and things there. So, but it is being addressed, I can assure you of that. We were told at the last parish council meeting regarding that particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I listened somewhat dumbfounded to the speaker against the application. on the basis that he proposed several alternative car parking arrangements for a car park that we've just approved on the previous application. This application is not to discuss possible other car parking arrangements. This application is to determine whether this is a suitable new access arrangement for a car park that we have just approved on the previous application. So I think members need to focus their minds on what they're actually determining. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Boyle.
Mr. Chairman, I have concerns about the entrance of the site being opposite the industrial park just across the way there, because quite often you see some massive lorries parked right on the bend there. So it's right opposite the access to this side. Now, if it has been approved, that's done and dusted. So we look at the access now. I just wonder, I think County Highways are dormant. They've gone to sleep. I mean, they never say anything, do they? No objections come through more or less regular. It's not his fault. He's just sent it to it. But what I'm saying is, are we going to address the parking of heavy vehicles opposite this access? I haven't seen, I may have missed it, but I haven't seen it anywhere in the report.
I think you'll find one of the conditions is that there will be some parking restrictions around the new junction for, I think, about 20 metres.
Opposite the junction, on the other side of the road, where the industrial park
on
is.
both sides of the road.
Because it's really dangerous there now.
There'll be speed restrictions at the same location. But rather than listen to me, let's listen to the highways.
By all means, if you answer my question, I'll listen to
Simon,
all
can
night.
you just come in and address those, please? Thank you.
Here we go. All the comments you just said is through the application process. We've assessed everything in terms of the junction accessibility and the conflict between this site and all the employment uses opposite. This is, well, we've resulted in the pedestrian crossing, the refugees being positioned where they are because we couldn't get them in between because of accessing into them units. So it's been fully assessed. There is waiting restrictions going in along there to ensure that the existing parking, and if it does become an issue, is going to get away from the junction and away from the areas where the vehicles are all manoeuvring. So it has all been considered as part of the application. It's in the transport report.
Thank you for that. Another point, when it was talking about the number of HGVs going onto this business park, I think it was 10 vehicle movements a day. So it's not excessive. But, I mean, we could do without 10 at all, but, you know, 10 is not excessive.
Yeah, it's not the ones going on, it's the ones to park outside on the bend, right by the entrance to the existing park. They're going to be opposite the entrance to this development.
Yeah, well, there'll be parking restrictions at that location.
But we know what happens with parking restrictions, nobody turns up.
Well, we'll get them enforced.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wondered whether, when I looked at the two applications, I don't know whether it was a chicken or the egg situation here, because we certainly do need to improve the access. Now we've approved the development, so that I'm very pleased to that the highways have answered the queries, and I'm sure that if there are any parking concerns, now's the time to put them forward for us to put them in the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ian Safford, please.
Thank you, Chairman. What exactly the simple priority junction, please?
Over to you.
A simple priority junction is just a giveaway.
Any other members wish to speak? Kelly, do you wish to say anything? No. Okay, in that case, let's put this to the vote, and I'll just go to the recommendations. Recommendation is to approve the application with conditions, and there are a couple of pages of conditions. So I'm going to propose that we approve this application. Thank you, Councillor Reid. All those in favour, please indicate. Okay. Those against?
1.
Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Thank you, members. The application is approved. I'm going to take a break for a couple of minutes now, just while people leave the room. Thank you. Okay, members, if you can resume your seats, please. Okay, members. Okay, members, there was a slight delay there because we had to swap some officers over. They're now back in place. And so we'll move on to the next planning application, which is 21/01033/FUL, the old surgery for High Street, Kinver. And Lucy, if you can just summarise the application for us, please.
The application relates to a two-storey terrace dwelling which is locally listed within Kimber Conservation Area. The application proposes to convert the existing front room into an integral garage through the removal of a window and installation of a roller garage door. The curb outside of the dwelling along the High Street will be dropped and an associated public parking space would be lost. Amended plans were submitted during the application process to remove a rear first floor extension. The subject property is a Grade B locally listed building, as is the dwelling to the east, number 3 High Street. The Kinver Conservation Area Management Plan lists both number 3 and number 4 as positive buildings within the townscape appraisal map. The proposed garage conversion and roller doors does not propose to utilise traditional materials and would result in the loss of a window form and an opening that is not authentic and would be detrimental to the character of the conservation area. Whilst there may be other roller garage doors along Kimber High Street, they were possibly installed many years ago or without planning permission. The agent has referenced the personal circumstances of the applicant as a reason to grant permission. Whilst the council recognises the personal circumstances of the applicant, these are not matters which outweigh the harm to the conservation area, the character of the Kimber High Street, the locally listed building. A number of objections from neighbours have been received. Overall, the garage conversion is recommended for refusal.
Thank you very much, Lucy. We did have a speaker for the application, but he's unable to attend. He sent in a very short statement that Annette will read out for us. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you, Chairman. These are the words of Mr. Guy Nichols in support of the application. Public access comments, observations, 4 and 5 High Street, Kinver. Original building was 2 terrace properties, not a Georgian building, as it's stated in the comments made by objectors. It is also not listed. Objectors' comments refer to the street scene. This building's character has been remodelled during the 1970s when it was converted into a doctor's surgery, and as a consequence lost its original style. Progress changes appearances. The street scene will not be harmed, as there are already several examples of garages and access points within 100 metres of number 4 High Street. Some comments posted on the application website do not relate to the current application and should be ignored. Others are duplicated and are untrue, irrelevant and misleading. i.e. comments suggest that 2 car parking spaces will be lost. The figure is only 1. It is noted that Staffordshire Highways are happy to reposition one of the existing spaces, subject to highways technical requirements being observed. Some comments regarding accuracy and completeness of drawings relate to the previous application and therefore have little relevance to the current application. Concerns regarding the phenomenal proposed works and the possibility of causing debilitating and mental health issues are insubstantial. It would appear that many of the comments raised aim to influence the reader's opinion in a negative manner. The purpose of the application is to assist the applicant, who is registered disabled, with the foreseeable needs regarding mobility, independence and convenience for as long as possible. Thank you, Chairman and members. For the avoidance of doubt, those were the words of Mr. Guy Nichols on behalf of the application.
Thank you, Annette. Members, I forgot to refer to the additional information on the late list, so I'll just go through that now. Whether you've seen his, have you all got a copy? You haven't got a copy of the late list. Okay, this is from County Highways, received 15/2/22, and it recommends refusal of this application. These comments superseded the form dated 20th of January 2022 and now considers pedestrian safety on the footway. The proposal is to create a new garage for the property by the removal of the front boundary wall, allowing vehicle access to the building, that is number 4 High Street. The main concern regarding the proposal is from a pedestrian and cyclist safety. So Highways have changed their position and they're now going for refusal. Oh, some of them laugh. So, as I say, yeah, they've just changed their position, and that's all it says on the back. So I'm now going to go to Mr. Phil Tart, the neighbour, who wants to speak against the application.
Good evening, Chairman and members. My name is Philip Tart. I live at number 6 High Street, next door to the applicant. I actually appear tonight on behalf of myself and my 2 immediate neighbours, Mrs. Scaife, who lives the other side next door at number 3, and Mrs. Taylor next door to me at number 7. Our properties sit within the Kimber Conservation Area and are locally listed and are regarded as positive buildings within the Townscape Appraisal Map. We agree in totality with the Planning Officer's report. The proposals for a garage in the applicant's front room will completely ruin the historic appearance of the property and the symmetry of the 3 Georgian double-fronted properties that are of considerable historic value. As the Planning Officer states, there is no public benefit to this proposal. The loss of a window and insertion of a standard roller shutter door, together with the lack of traditional materials, fails to comply with the Council's design guide. The applicant relies on the existence of a very small number of other garages in the High Street. These were established decades ago, and in the case of number 3A, in excess of 50 years ago, originally being used, believe it or not, as a stable for a horse. The garage is not now in use, as Mrs. Scaife, the owner, has confirmed that it is too dangerous to use on this extremely busy section of the High Street, which is going to get even busier with the opening of the Burgesses Housing Association apartments for the elderly directly opposite the proposed garage. The frontage of number 7 is a shop front, not a garage, and to my knowledge has never been used as such. The public parking spaces at the front of the properties are an extremely valuable asset to local residents, to workmen visiting the High Street properties, and to visitors to Kimber, bringing valuable footfall to the retail outlets of the High Street. The loss of either or both of these spaces would further reduce parking in the village that has already lost 17 High Street parking spaces, with public parking at a premium according to the Parish Council. Mrs. Scaife at number 3 requires the use of the space as she has a blue badge for her son. I know of no precedent, members, for a garage to be built over public car parking spaces, and Councillor Sisley has proposed an alternative solution to the applicant through the creation of a 3rd disabled space in addition to the 2 existing spaces. I'm very pleased to hear, Chairman, that the Highways Officer has now changed his recommendation to refusal for the reasons you've helpfully outlined. So, Chairman and members, in conclusion, I respectfully invite the committee to refuse this application based on the Planning Officer's professional and sound reasons, together with those of the Parish Council, Councillor Sisley, all of the immediate neighbours, and now the Highways Department. This is a locally listed building in a conservation area. It is unacceptable in terms of design. It will have a negative impact on a valuable heritage asset, and it fails to have any positive impact on local character.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tart. Is Councillor Sisley on Kelly. Is there? I'm going to call Councillor Sisley next, then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry I'm not with you today in person. What I thought was a bad cold has proved to be COVID-19. So, whilst I'm keen to meet you all, I must say at this particular time, I'd rather be in bed. I would therefore keep this very brief. You have all read the documents, and I am not going to go over them for all the reasons given for the refusal of this application, as they have been covered in detail by the planning officers, the parish council, the highways. The fact that we have a couple of historic garages established prior to the making of our conservation area is no reason to damage these historically important buildings for one person's limited needs. I would ask you to refuse this application. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sisley. Councillor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, can I thank you and the members and officers for coming down to Kimber and looking at the site meeting today on such a terrible day. So I'm presuming you all got back safely. Yeah. I should have said, and I'm sorry, I had taken advice from the monitoring officer of not taking any part in the vote or the debate. I am, however, in accordance with the council's planning protocol, permitted to speak, as you are going to let me, as a ward member, and that I'm going to do. I have investigated the terms of the application and have spoken to the neighbours of 3 and 6, and after deliberation, I have come to the conclusion that I see no reason to refuse this application. I refer you to a short report from Highways, who at the time had objected, and now they've changed their minds. So I would like to know really why, after messing up my report. And just a few things to say is that the garage next door to number 6 was a house. Well, it was a garage. It was a garage to a house. And it was a garage for many, many years. And the shop has only been in existence if a year. So that's wrong. And the other one, the building is not listed. It is not a listed building. So I don't know where this is coming from, I'm afraid. I like the idea that Councillor Sisley is saying about the 3 parking. If we could have 3 parking there, it would solve a lot of problems up there. But otherwise, I just got to refer you to my report, and thank you, Chairman and members. And I hope members will support me in this refusal.
Thank you,
Thank you very much. I'll go outside now.
Thank you.
And
Councillor Reid, you want to talk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not very often when we get an application and Highways are stating that it should be refused. It's usually when it's the other way around. And therefore, if it was the other way around for approval and we refused it, it could go to an appeal. This one won't. If it's approved. So that, in fact, would mean that we're going against the recommendations of Highways. And I don't think that's the right thing. I visited this morning, like those that got wet did this morning, and my first impression was having read the report beforehand, that they're absolutely spot on in the fact that the new proposed garage entrance with a roller shutter would just not be in keeping with the existing, and therefore I shall be supporting the proposal for the recommendation for review.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I too braved the rain to go on that site visit, and all I can say is I wish Councillor Reid had hurried up and got there a bit earlier. We might have been able to start a bit quicker. He obviously didn't realise about the car parking problems in Kinder. It's a pity the angle of the picture that you're seeing on the screen isn't straight on, because can you do that? Right, and a bit to the bit towards no, just a little bit towards the right, if you can get it. The point is, the house that you see with the large door is the application property. The house to the left of it and the house to the right of it, if you look at those ornate toppings to the windows on the ground floor, they all match absolutely perfectly, and they give three buildings in absolute perfect symmetry, and that is part of the conservation area. To drag one of those out and put an ugly roller shutter door in that, you can see them now, the three of them. They're all in exactly the same shape, they're different colours, but the symmetry is absolutely perfect. To drag one of those windows out and put an ugly roller shutter door that actually appears to have to be on the outside because the width of the building from the doorway to the next property is only sufficient to get a garage width in. I'm sorry, the whole proposal is an abomination, and to place that in such a beautiful area, if we approve this, we want condemning as a planning committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Okay. Robert, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know that I'm a very strong supporter of site visits, and this morning did show clearly what Councillor Mason's just been pointing out, without having to screw around the picture.
Councillor Penny-Allen.
Thank you. I'm assuming that the double doors on this property would easily access a mobility scooter. Is there some reason why that couldn't take place?
Yeah, I'll just clarify that. The planning application before us is what we have to look at. So they've applied to take out the window. It's not within our gift to say there could be an alternative. So we've just got to decide what this application is. It probably could fit, but that's not really within our remit to decide if an alternative might be a more palatable option.
Thank you. Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must admit, I didn't look at all the paperwork, and when I got there, I thought the application was to replace the two wooden doors with the roller shutter door, which I thought was an abomination anyway. Realising that to actually replace the right-hand window with a roller shutter, I then thought it was a bit of a joke, to be honest. But I know I shouldn't really say that, but I can't. I've got to support the officer's recommendations.
Thank you for that. Kelly,
it was just a point of clarity on a couple of comments that have been made. Just to confirm, members, we're not saying this building is listed. It is locally listed in our local list for heritage and as part of our heritage appraisal work. So we're not saying it's a listed building by definition. It's a locally listed building.
Thank you for that. Okay, no further comment. I just wanted to say thank you to the people that did turn up to the site visit this morning in the pouring rain. I mean, the Kinver High Street still looked nice, but we were all a bit wet when we finished the meeting. So Councillor Steele, Councillor Mason, Councillor Cox, Councillor Henry Williams, Lynn Hinchley, and of course Kelly, who came all the way down from Stone. A hell of a journey that time of the day. So thank you all for coming in the rain. And let's put this recommendation to the vote then, please. All those in favour of refusal?
Okay. Okay, that's unanimous.
Yep.
Okay, that's refused.
The application is refused. Thank you. Okay, members, Councillor Hinge is back in the room. Have we lost anybody else in the meantime? No? Okay, let's move to the next planning application then, please. It's 21.
Chairman, I did declare an interest in this and I will now withdraw from the meeting.
Okay, thank you. It's planning application 21 oblique 01123 oblique FUL, and it's Chillington Hall, Chillington Park, Chillington, and it's the installation of a shepherd's hut. Right. Lucy, can you just summarise, please?
The application relates to an area within the corner of the secondary walled garden facing within the grounds of Chillington Hall, within the parish of Brood. It is proposed to site a shepherd's hut and access track to provide holiday accommodation. The proposal is located within the green belt and does not fall under any of the exceptions listed in the MPPF or the core strategy GB1 and represents inappropriate development in the green belt. However, the benefits of the proposal, that it is to help secure the future conservation of the heritage assets, clearly outweigh the limited harm caused to the openness of the greenbelt and therefore constitute the very special circumstances to recommend this proposal is acceptable in principle. Amended plans have been submitted during the application, altering the access track from straight to curved, the fencing from steel posts and netting to traditional estate-style fencing, and additional planting in line with the Garden Trust, Historic England and Conservation Officer comments. There are no concerns arising in respect of neighbour amenity, highways, tree or ecology implications. It is therefore considered that permission should be granted, subject to a condition restricting occupancy to a maximum of 28 days to ensure the shepherd's hut is not used as a dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Got no local members present, but Councillor Holmes, who has sent her apologies tonight, asked me to let you know that she hadn't got an issue with this particular application. Does any member wish to speak on it? No? Okay. I'll second that then for you. All those in favour of the recommendation to approve? Thank you.
It's unanimous.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's passed unanimously. Thank you, members. And the last planning application tonight is 21 oblique, oh, he's back in. 21 oblique 01174 oblique FUL, and it's Dunstan Business Village. and it's an application for 5 new office cabins. And Lucy, can you just summarise for us, please?
Yep. Dunstan Business Village is located north of Penkridge, near to the village of Dunstan, and is accessed off the A449, which is a major road. Dunstan Business Village is a redevelopment of a cluster of redundant agricultural buildings of various vernaculars. The conversion of the buildings to offices for small and medium-sized businesses began in 2006, following permission for the conversion of buildings which were allocated as car parking as per the original consent. There have been a number of planning applications relating to the site in recent years, allowing some allowing for the expansion of the business village outside the original area for the car parking and log cabins. This site is, I beg your pardon, this application proposes the stationing of another 5 log cabins, and that site map is a little bit deceptive. That one's better. So they're actually contained within the existing envelope of the site. So it's just those 5 log cabins right at the top, and there were no objections from any statutory consultees, and therefore the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Local members, Councillor Bates, you've indicated you want to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I wish to propose that the application be approved as per the Assistant Team Manager's comments in respect of item 6, that is the conclusion on page 102, which states Dunstan Business Village represents suitable development in accordance with the aims and the presumption in favour of sustainable development in the MPPF and policy MP1 of the core strategy. And I'd like to comment that this site has provided a large number of jobs already, and it will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Thank you, Robert. Does any other member wish to speak on this matter? Penny Allen?
I'll just ask a question, please, about the parking. There's a lot of reference to the loss of spaces for this application, and there's a reference to travel planning, and the parish council have added in a reference to ask about installation of traffic management measures. Can I just ask, what is the actual situation with this? What is the parish council concerned about? Thank you.
Answer that.
I think generally the parish are concerned about the amount of traffic moving in and out of the site, but it's only reduction of 8 car parking spaces overall for the need of what the appendix are in the core strategy. So we consider it acceptable, and ultimately there won't be a material impact on the movement to and from the site above and beyond the existing situation.
Okay, no other comments. Let's vote on the recommendation, please. And that recommendation is to approve. Thank you. It's unanimous. The application is approved. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the monthly report. And it's over to Kelly to give us a monthly report, please, Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman. I shall be quite quick on this one because it wasn't long since I did the last one. Just starting with the future training sessions. Obviously, we had one for members before the committee this evening relating to Section 106s. We have had further requests for additional training. Namely, I've had one for tree applications and trees and conservation areas to understand what we look at in those applications and a bit of understanding. So we're going to be working on bringing that one to you in the next few months, but I'll let you know when a date's been agreed with that one. As always, if there's anything else that members want to raise with me, please do let me know if you think of any additional training that you would like. Turning then to changes in national policy, there haven't been any since the previous report. And then looking at appeal decisions, there has been one appeal decision since the last report, which related to a illuminated sheet advert or a digital poster that was being proposed on Wolverhampton Road on the side of a property in Wedges Mills. The appeal was dismissed. The inspector agreed with the case officer that the proposed advertisement would be detrimental to the visual amenity of the area. Moving then on to statistics, there's no update since the last report on planning enforcement, but I'm pleased to say that we were, and hopefully still will be, above the 80% target, currently at 83.53, and that's despite the increasing number of particularly complex cases we're dealing with. Then finally, we have the statistics from development management around speed and quality. And again, there has been no update in the national statistics since last month, which are reflected in the report. The final thing I would point in terms of performance and statistics, obviously members will be aware now that we have published our 5-year land supply statement, which I'm pleased to say is at 7.12, which gives us a very strong position for the next year in terms of dealing with planning applications and our plan. And that concludes my report this evening, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Question one?
Yeah, what I'd like to say that Kelly was talking about tree planting. If any councillors are interested in having trees planted in their area, would they please contact Ryan Taylor? He's the man. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Any other comment? Yes, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chairman. Is that it for the S106 training? Because I have to say tonight's presentation was very legal and most of it went over my head.
Well, we're always told that it's a legal document, so I wasn't expecting much from it, but carry on.
It's the monitoring of the S106 agreement. I'll say it again. I won't go through I could reel all the issues off if you want me to, but I won't. We need some training we as a group, members, we passed the agreement to have an S106. Then we have no more say in what goes on.
It's exactly what Piers said. Annette, do you want to comment? No? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And Councillor Steele, it's obviously it's an issue I know we've spoken about, and it's an issue that's been raised at Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well in terms of the monitoring of Section 106s. Now, I didn't hear Piers's training this afternoon, but I think it sort of reiterated the position in terms of the roles of officers and members in terms of Section 106. What we will be doing, though, is going to be providing members with information in terms of the monitoring of the Section 106s. So when on a regular basis, probably quarterly, for the locality, we'll be providing information that will set out which Section 106s and where they are and what the situation is and what money and spend is available. So we'll be doing that shortly. We've now secured some new spreadsheet that has allowed us to drill down that information. So we should be able to have that information so members can see that on a regularly updated basis. I hope that helps.
I understand there's been a panel recently appointed to look at Section 106s. Yes, can you tell us about this panel, please?
Yes, I can. Councillor Mason and myself, we represent the members, and we have somebody from the Accounts Department, yes. And we had an application recently regarding 106 money for Brood in respect of housing that had taken place there. And there were two applications. One was for the Brood Parish Council, and that was for changing rooms for various sports. And the other one was from the local bowling club, and they wanted to provide changing rooms. And a decision was made at that meeting. I'm not party to that decision being sent out, so I can't comment on that. But that is the background.
Terry, you want to say something?
Well, the point I was going to make is that that's a legal panel to help determine where money which has not been accurately determined how it's to be spent is decided. Normally, a 106 should be absolutely clear about what that money is to be spent on. In the case of this one that Councillor Bates is referring to, and one that is just about to come up, the section 106 description was quite loose, and it said it is to be spent on leisure or sport facilities in the area. It did not specify which facilities, where it was to be allocated, and therefore once we got the money in, we invited various people, and in fact that one was Brood, and the next one is Kinver, has a very similar one coming up this month or next month, where the section 106 is too loose. So we have invited people who satisfy the criteria of the section 106 to put in bids, which are then evaluated, and then we tell them which one we're going to pick. So it's not part of the normal section 106 process that Councillor Steele's talking about. It is really to clarify or make a determination on things where the clarity hasn't been there. However, I suspect that whilst Mrs Roberts answered Councillor Steele about monitoring where money is spent, I suspect Councillor Steele wasn't talking about where money is spent, it's where other obligations such as providing shops and car parks are not followed through, but I'm not quite sure. Bearing in mind there is only one application that's in the mind of Councillor Steele, I'll leave it to him to clarify that one for me.
Yes, well, we'll leave that. We'll put that to one side. It's been well discussed. Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listened carefully to the presentation tonight, and if I remember correctly, what Piers said was members should not get involved in the drafting of the 106 because it's a legal document. But he also went on to say if they have concerns, they should be free to express them to the officers. And so can this panel be a conduit for members to express their concerns about 106 agreements if they're not happy?
Well, let's ask Anne, because I don't know the answer.
Thank you. The panel is, as Councillor Mason said, the panel is specifically set there to determine that for any section 106 where it's not clear. So I think, and I'm sure that Piers would have said this evening, if there is any lack of clarity or anywhere where a member wishes to have further information or have a discussion about the section 106 or understand what's in the section 106, then the first point of call has got to be the officer. I'm not sure that they actually involving the panel, because the panel is there to determine specific bids, if you like, on the basis of things that have been submitted. So I'm not sure. I think that might just add a process and further delay into that process, to be honest with you, Councillor Boyle.
Well, could I just come back on that? Is it possible we can formalise this so that members have got a procedure they can go through to address their concerns about 106s before it's actually signed off?
First of all, I just wanted to reiterate the point that Piers made, and that is that when you decide on a planning application which is subject to a section 106 agreement, the report will clearly highlight the heads for the section 106 agreement. And as an officer who regularly drafts these agreements, our objective is that the agreement, reflects the provisions and the heads contained in the report. Now, as has been rightly pointed out, there are occasions when the section 106 will actually stipulate a sum of money to be paid for community facilities in the vicinity of the area. What we always endeavour to do, in the reports, is actually link the section 106 to a particular policy, to a particular particular social facility, community facility. And but sometimes, because the policy, is general and it will actually specify, general community facilities, we're always going to have situations where, particularly if the developers are amenable to this, where the agreement will be worded in a more general way. And at that point, the decision was actually made to have a panel which will, determine, where those social facilities, etc., should be allocated. And the essence of that was just, simply to have transparency rather than as officers, we decide, where the money should be spent in the vicinity of the relevant area. Now, that is the sole purpose of the panel. And that, in my view, that's the only remit that that panel should have. Because once you, as members, have actually decided on the terms of the Section 106 agreement, like you have tonight, you've got very clear heads what your Section 106 agreement is actually going to contain. And our role now is to make sure that that agreement is negotiated and finalised to reflect those particular heads. And were we to deviate from that, or if there's a material change, then we would come back to you as members. So, from a legal perspective, there isn't really any further input that I need from members to negotiate and finalise that legal document, because I have before me the committee report, which actually sets out what you have actually approved. And that is how this process actually operates.
I'll just come back because we've had problems in the past. It's not been perfect, has it? That's why we've had the presentation partly tonight.
Yeah.
And there has to be a process whereby members, if they have concerns, not to get involved in drafting the document, but to express those concerns to the officers who are. And I think that should be a formal route somewhere for members to do it. Otherwise, you're going to be back in the same situation in the future.
I think Annette just wants to say something.
I think, just to be clear, that process is already in place. You need to engage with the case officer when you get consulted on the planning application. That's the point at which it gets put into place. So all that Pardip's outlined, that by the time the Section 106 gets to Pardip or Pardip's colleagues, all of that work's been done. That's too late in the process to inform what is in it. That's what I said in response to the presentation earlier. As soon as you get a consultation on a planning application, and if you think there is something that needs to be considered in terms of a legal agreement with the site, you let your case officer know at the soonest possibility so you can negotiate that then. By the time the decision's made, it's too late to then start adding things in. And as Pardip said, the Landywood application tonight, you'll see there's a heads of terms. That will be the Section 106. Now, some of the triggers and the details and the legal wording will be for Pardip and her colleagues to work on, but to add additional things in, it's too late at that point. So engage in the planning application, and ideally in the local plan before it, if it's a big site that's coming forward, to make sure it's got everything that you think it needs.
Thank you, Kelly. Councillor Mason, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to thank Councillor Boyle for trying to add even more workload to me. Why should Councillor Bates and I sit there so that you can approach us with a problem on a site that we know nothing about, so that we can then talk to an officer that knows the site implicitly? Why don't you just cut out the middleman and you go and talk to the officer about the application that is in your ward that you know about, and leave me out of it?
For Democrat, I give many people as possible involved.
Okay, Lynn Ingsley, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a thing I want to ask, as Kelly knows, the building in Whitehill, that'll eventually come up. No, there was a 106 agreement on that, and according to the parish council, they're saying the money's going to play area, and they don't want a play area.
That's what the panel set up for.
Yeah, but it's already done, so...
Chair, I'm just going to make the point that, if there are any issues or concerns about a particular agreement, as Kelly has indicated, please come and talk to us, because, clearly, this is a public meeting to actually discuss, this particular item on the agenda. It's not to discuss the individual concerns that members have in relation to Section 106 agreements. We can deal with those outside of this meeting, and we're more than happy to assist.
Yeah. Yes. There are two more people that have indicated. Be very quick, please. Ian Sadler first, then David Lockley.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. We have seen the heads of agreement, roughly, of the 106 for Landywood tonight. Do we actually get to see the final 106 as signed? And the other thing is, do the parish councils get any input into what the panel decide?
I think Kelly's already answered that question. We've got the heads and the fine details of drafting the agreement, the triggers, etc., are left to your officers and legal, to resolve, so that the end product, so to speak, reflects what the committee objective is. These documents can run into 40-50 pages sometimes, and it doesn't make sense for us as officers to share the documents with you, because from an administrative point of view, we are quite happy to deal with the drafting and ensure that the final document reflects the wishes of the committee. And in essence, this is what it's all about.
And if I can just add to that, the reason why, as Piers explained tonight, is that Section 106 need to meet very specific legal tests, and that's why they're drafted in such a way. But all Section 106s, once sealed, are publicly available on our website as part of our public access. So they are public documents. But the bit between where planning committee or delegated decisions are for heads of terms to what you then see as the sealed version, that is a legal process that takes place where only the legal people and the officers of both parties are part of that, because it should be no different to what you've seen in the heads of terms.
Dave Lockley.
Thank you, Chair. There's obviously a disconnect between 106 and us, and we've been talking about it for at least the last 12 months, 18 months. There's something seriously wrong in the system that doesn't serve us. Now, apart from that, and can you see these things are going on and off, aren't they? Oh, is it? It's me. That's nothing. No surprise there then. Anyway, the Audit and Risk Committee, we brought this up, this problem with one. And we're waiting for a report, which should be in about 3 months' time, because Audit seem to be having a problem with keeping. Well, they are having a problem, or were having a problem with keeping an eye on 106 agreement. Annette might know more about this, but just as another thing, an aside, I didn't realise that Terry and Len were on this panel. I didn't know there was a panel. I don't know if anyone else knew there was a panel. But if we're going to have a panel or a committee, can I suggest that we have a committee and we involve more of us, so that
you can suggest, but it's not for tonight.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We're talking about 106s.
Well, okay, about that. Well, that is about 106. That on a 106 panel.
Yes, but it's about.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And just to put just to dispel a few myths, I think, as well. Firstly, in terms of picking up Councillor Sadler's point about the parishes. Now, parishes have the same opportunity as well, of course, and that's what we're really keen to engage with parishes at the early stages of the planning application, ideally through the local plan, as Kelly set out, and ideally through a pre-application conversation. But ultimately, the parishes are having, can make their case, and also are, recommended as well and suggested that they can raise any issues that they believe are appropriate, meeting those 3 tests. in the section 106. So that's where parishes get involved. We recognise that some parishes don't see many applications with section 106s, so they're not dealt with on a regular basis. But what we have said that we will do is some training for parishes so that parishes can understand that. Not the same detail as what you've had tonight, obviously, but something similar, probably led by us. So there's that. In terms of Councillor Lockley's issues, in terms of the section 106 and the audit panel, yeah, absolutely, indeed, we recognised that there were some issues with section 106 and therefore asked for a report, an audit report on section 106, which highlighted, as we expected, a number of issues, largely to do with reporting of the section 106s. That was a report that was probably about a year ago now. We came, as you'll recall, Councillor Lockley, we came to the Audit and Risk Committee the tail end of last year, probably autumn time, and we set out that we'd already made a number of recommendations and dealt with a number of the audit recommendations that were there. But principally, it dealt with issues in terms of clarity, in terms of protocols. But so some of those protocols and some of those things I think might be useful to share with members in terms of the detail of how an application, how a section 106 is weaved in with an application, and we'll talk about how we can do that. But largely, and again in response to Councillor Steele's question, in terms of some of those sites, it's important that we can recognise that that the sites that have a section 106, that they will be on a list, so members will see them on a regular basis, probably quarterly. We've now got our, what we'd like to say, our house in order in terms of the spreadsheets and the database, so that we can start monitoring that. We meet regularly now, and we have been doing for some 6 months, and we look through every live section 106 agreement, checking where the spend is, checking whether it needs to be drawn down, and then monitoring it as well. So that members will get all that information, because there's lots of it across the district, as you might imagine, but for their locality they will get the basic headline information, and that's what we'll starting to do for members.
Annette, thank you. That was very reassuring. I didn't realise we were going to get that information coming through. Excellent news. It's obviously an issue with some members, but we've had enough for today. I'm going to suggest. I'm going to close the meeting, and there'll be another time and date when we'll carry on discussing section 106s, I am sure. Thank you all very much for your attendance.